This blast
Okay.
comes almost exactly 24 hours after a similar explosion yesterday. A frightening pattern emerging here, would you say?
Absolutely. I think it's absolutely appalling what's going on at the moment. I mean, yesterday we had the convoy attacked, we had the firing on the Russian passenger plane. And what this really shows is that the so-called rebels are getting more and more desperate. They don't have overwhelming public support. They don't have majority support. So they're getting more and more violent and more wild. And I think this sort of sums up how desperate their position is, really.
And the bomb again went off in a very crowded area. So what or who was the target of this blast?
Well, it's quite clearly that their aim is to spread terror amongst the population in Damascus, to terrorize civilians. And it's absolutely shameful that these people are being backed by my country, the UK, by France, by the Western powers. These are terrorist attacks. Let's call them what they are. They haven't been condemned by William Hague or Francois Hollande or John Kerry. I think that's absolutely appalling, because if these had taken place in Tel Aviv or in Riyadh or anywhere else in a country which was a Western ally, then they would be roundly condemned, but they're not. And it's quite appalling that these so-called rebels, with Western help, are trying to bomb their way to power in Syria, killing innocent civilians, spreading terror amongst the population. And I think that the likes of William Hague have got blood on their hands, I'm afraid.
Well, you mentioned the rebels there, and on Monday, they immediately accused the government of faking the blast. Do you think today's explosion confirms or refutes this?
Well, it completely refutes it, I think, because, I mean, it's quite absurd to think that the Syrian government would be blowing up members of the government itself and putting bombs in crowded areas, because why would it want to do that for? I mean, it's quite clear that what's going on is an Al-QAEDA dominated uprising now in Syria, a minority uprising by radical Islamists. And it's interesting, isn't it, that if you were to say that the Syrian government is behind these bombings in the Western media, then that's fine and acceptable. But if, of course, you say that the US government was behind the 9/11 attacks, you'd be denounced as a crank conspiracy theorist. And so it's okay to say that the Syrian government has done these things. But if we say the US government is capable of false flag operations, then that's fine. And that's completely wrong, of course.
There's been a lot of speculation, hasn't there, that Western money has been ending up in the hands of extremists. What do you make of that in the context of this blast?
Well, it clearly has, hasn't it? Because, of course, these blasts cost money. The bombing, the guns, the weaponry, etc. We already had the Sheikh Hamad of Qatar boasting a few days ago, saying how his government was going to give the rebels any help it needed, including arms. The British government has been sending money into the rebels. And so I think the people who are funding these terrorists have got responsibility. They've got blood on their hands. And it's no good just saying, they're not even condemning it. And so I think that the responsibility for this lies with countries like Qatar, with Saudi Arabia, with Turkey, with Western powers who are, funding these people.
OK, journalist and broadcaster Neil Clark, thank you for those views today.
Thanks very much.